And let's talk about this with our next guest. Christopher Sands is the director of the Wilson Center's Canada Institute. He's in Washington. Wonderful to see you again, and welcome back.
Great to see you, Heather.
I know you had dinner with some Canadians who were in town for the inauguration events, Christopher, and you were speaking to them last night. What was your sense of, heading into today, the greatest expectations and concerns?
Well, I think the big topic, which is the one you've been focusing on this morning, is whether the 25% tariffs are coming. And as near as I can tell, having talked to more people on the American side, the expectation is there'll be some sort of announcement as among more than 100 executive orders that the U.S.'s new president will authorize a tariff, but it will be authorizing the president to use the tariff to counter specific things. So it'll be sort of a suspended tariff, sort of like loading the gun and sitting it on the table. You still are nervous, but it won't necessarily get shot at you today. But everyone's wondering about, well, if not today, when? If it's selective on certain products, what's on the chopping block and what might be spared? So I think this is the key. And there's no business like personal business. And I think so many Canadians are in Washington to make sure they're establishing contacts with the new team, to talk to old friends and make sure they've got good information. It's just a whirlwind of talking today.
Of Canadians arriving on the scene. I want to come back to that in just a second, because that sounds like it's going to be quite an event today. But if you could just clarify a little bit, because even on this morning of the inauguration, it's still not crystal clear what form, if any, these tariffs will take if launched. So based on what you have gleaned from talking last night, and in your own sense they're doing your work in Washington, do you have a feel for what scenario is most likely?
Only that there will be sort of announced tariffs. I think some people think some of the China tariffs might come more quickly, but there are expected to be more than 100 executive orders, undoing a lot of Biden-era policies, putting in some new changes. Some of them are serious, some of them are light. But Trump's strategy, similar to the way that he announced pieces of his cabinet, will be to flood the zone. All of these activities suddenly hitting our screens and being available on the internet at the same time. And that's going to have a lot of people scrambling. The president met with some of his trusted Republican leaders, a very small group. There's coverage a little bit in the Wall Street Journal this morning, Washington Post talking about some of what was gleaned from those conversations. The president wants to hit the ground running. He wants to have a symbolically powerful first day. And I think while Canadians will be focusing on the tariff, there'll be an awful lot of Americans looking for pardons for the we should say January 6th insurrectionists, maybe some others who were involved and were convicted, obviously, not people who were in the middle. There'll be some other important changes that are really domestic on, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act, maybe some appointment issues on federal workers. It's going to be a big day.
It's interesting. Yes, as you say. I mean, he mentioned tariffs only in passing. One slight reference in the rally last night. So, again, we wait. Do you think, since we last spoke, the federal government, a couple of key ministers came out and had quite a substantive news conference on exactly what has changed? Border security measures, laying out the details of this $1.3 billion plan, the details for it, the changes to immigration policy. That happened in the intervening days since our last conversation. Do you get a sense that any of that precision or any of those measures have made an impact at all in the thinking of Donald Trump on tariffs and border security?
I think the announcements prove that Canada is willing to negotiate. And I think it's a very frustrating situation. And I can understand how Canadians feel in that, yes, Trump makes a bombastic threat and it leads people to worry, what's he going to do? But when he makes a threat and then asks for cooperation, the cooperation is fairly logical and reasonable. It's hard to sort of square the tone and all the bluster with the actual reasonable request. I don't think anybody in Washington thinks Canada's pro-fentanyl or pro-smuggling of anything. So that's kind of a reassurance that we're on the same page. And as Canadians that I've talked to here in town and who will be here all day long, that's a message that a lot of Canadians are putting out. Yes, as the hat says, Canada is not for sale. But on the other hand, there's so many areas we are working together and could work together, and there's a real will from Canada to partner with the United States, of course. But I think making that pitch, not on YouTube or something broadcast. Even the former Deputy Prime Minister Freeland's op-ed in the Washington Post today is a step. But I think it's never the same as when you can talk to people face to face. You can maybe do some myth busting on some of the ideas that they have, and then really focus on how you can move forward.
So that then becomes the backdrop for the event today. Some 1,500 guests at the Canadian Embassy on Pennsylvania Avenue, and the list of people attending: politicians and business leaders, union representatives. Key sectors are going to be represented too, I understand, Christopher: auto, energy, financial. So it's a chance, as you said, face-to-face time. What do you expect will be the message the Canadian guests are going to be saying to the American guests who will be there? And to what end? To what degree will this help?
Well, the tariff is the focus of so much of this conversation, and so they'll be trying to say, a broad tariff across all products will be counterproductive, and in different ways. A commodity product like wheat or oil, natural gas, those products are coming in. You're just going to make them 25% more expensive. And as Jonathan Wilkinson, the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, said in Washington last week, this could add to the cost of a gallon of gas almost 75 cents. That's big impact. And I think they're going to try to put some numbers on this, try to get people's attention to just how bad it could be. Okay. I also think for industries like autos, where you have parts going back and forth and back and forth, at least with the GST, we have a system where you can get your rebate back for products that are going back. It's a more sophisticated system. They'll be talking about how will this work, and will it just escalate costs and escalate inflation?
Right.
So I think they're going to try and take that argument and say the broad brush is dangerous, but if you can go sector by sector and tell us what's wrong, maybe we can show you a better way than hitting us with a tariff.
To be continued. You have another interview to get to, sir, so I'm going to let you go and do that, and I'll speak to you again soon, I hope. Thank you, Christopher Sands from Washington. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Heather.